Well, there are new reports that millions of dollars in CIA funds wound up in the pockets of al-Qaeda. That's according to the New York Times. That money given to Afghanistan's government was used at times to buy off warlords and even to pay the ransom for an Afghan diplomat held hostage. Tom Joscelyn is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, senior editor of the Long War Journal. And we pick up off a theme here, Tom. We've been looking at these new documents that were released from bin Laden's lair. And in these documents, there's talk about ransom pay. Tell us the significance about what we learned from that.
What we learned is that al-Qaeda successfully had their hand in their involvement in this whole kidnapping and hostage-taking of an Afghan diplomat. It's really an interesting operation. They basically work with other groups in the area, and they've coordinated everything to basically get a high ransom for them. The ransom that comes in that they were able to extract is actually $5 million, which is a lot of money, especially over there. And part of that money came from the CIA funds that were given to the Afghan government. Now, what's also interesting about this is you can see that bin Laden in these files suspects that part of the money came from the U.S., which shows you how in tune he was with things. He was not some lion in winter in retirement. This is a guy who was very much on top of things, very much in control, and suspected that part of the money they got, and he came from the U.S. And what he says is he basically tells his guys, you got to wash the money, basically. You got to exchange it for some other currency. You got to get rid of your bags. You got to make sure that this money is clean because they could be tracking it.
So he thought that within the billfold could be a tracker that was actually out to get al-Qaeda?
Or the bags, or even somehow the money could be radioactively laced. He was worried about all sorts of things, ways to be tracked.
Now, there's those in the intelligence community, and we heard some earlier on Fox News say, listen, we do use money at times. We have no way of knowing that this money is the exact money that went to al-Qaeda. A lot of people gave money to Karzai, and there's been reports in the New York Times and others that Iran would come with bag full of money. So how do we know it's actually our money that went to al-Qaeda?
Well, the Times piece was pretty specific. It's interesting. It said that basically some of the money came from other nation states, but then part of the money, part of this $5 million, came from the CIA funds that went through the Afghan government. So the Times reporter actually pieced this together with other intelligence, other sourcing he had to put the whole story together. And it's when he saw what was in the bin Laden documents that the light came on to see that the whole picture in place, to see how the whole thing went down.
It is interesting to when you take a step back. We had this huge drone campaign that isn't officially recognized by the CIA. Of course, we talk about it all the time in the tribal areas, Afghanistan, Pakistan. So if we're continuing to try to target al-Qaeda that way, then what is this revealing to us about our other strategies and how well that's working to go against the bad guys?
Well, even take the drone campaign. If you look at the documents carefully, people can cherry pick for them to say the drone campaign decimated al-Qaeda and had really al-Qaeda on the ropes. There's no question that there are phrases or paragraphs, sentences in these documents that say that drones are having a big effect and are having, really taking their toll on al-Qaeda. What's interesting about the documents, though, is all the things they say about what they're doing to survive the drone strikes. And they took a number of measures, active measures, to basically get around the impact of the drone strikes. They had surviving leadership cadre, they had leaders coming back from Iran, and they were grooming a new generation of leaders, according to these documents.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I remember reading that in the court documents. There was these references to these spy planes, and it's obvious that the al-Qaeda operatives on the ground could easily see the drones.
And hear them.
Heard them, knew they were coming, and were figuring out ways to get away. How successful they are, we don't know at this exact point. If we can go back to the documents for a moment, again, we continue to look through from the New York City courtroom that's been revealing these. There are those that say when you look at the documents, you still sort of see, pen pals, people, different al-Qaeda operatives that are writing each other. It really just shows that bin Laden was doing a lot of writing in his late years, but wasn't doing much else. And that's one of the analysis that comes from there. You have a very different take of it. What is that?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely obvious that he was in control, and there's just too many facts, too many details we could muster to show that. You can see people requesting commands, requesting orders, him giving them. You can see a whole chain. Now, remember, we're only seeing still a small part of what's there. What's interesting is we only have about 24 documents out of about 1.5 million, approximately, that were captured in bin Laden's lair. We've been calling for more of those to be released, and I think you can see many more of the details about how he was in command and control. But even from the small set we have, we see him issuing orders and those orders being followed.
All the more reason to pay attention. Tom, great to see you as always.
Thanks.
Thank you.